Montana Territory, 1879. The snow came early, and so did the woman they called a curse. Zebediah North had just come down from the ridge, saddle blanketed in frost, when he saw her standing by the edge of his barn barefoot, wrapped in a torn shawl, eyes too still for someone still alive. She looked like she had clawed her way through a blizzard and lost everything on the way. He dismounted slow, boots crunching over ice. "Ma'am," he said carefully, voice low like he was speaking to a spooked colt. "You lost." She didn't flinch. Just stared at him with eyes the color of smoke over ash. "I am not lost," she said. "I was left." Zeb took a step forward. Her skin was raw from windburn, fingers red and cracked around the edges of her shawl. A bruise bloomed along her jaw, purple and sickly, like someone had tried to break her voice and failed. "I got a fire inside. You look half frozen." "You do not know who I am," she said flat. "You would not offer that if you did." Zeb studied her. "I do not care who you are." She blinked, lips parting just a little. Then her knees buckled. He caught her before she hit the snow. Her name was Seraphina Dale. She told him the next morning, curled beneath the quilt on his spare bed, her voice rough from cold and silence. "They say I bring death," she said. "Everywhere I go. My mother died birthing me. My father drank himself to death before I turned 8. The family that took me in, they burned in their sleep. Then the rancher last spring, he caught fire in the fields. Folks say I am cursed." Zeb fed the fire another log. "And do you believe that?" She looked at him, eyes tired but sharp. "I do not know what I believe," he nodded. "Well, I believe you need a place to rest. You can stay as long as you like." She stared at him like he had just offered her the moon. Word got around fast. Zeb had taken in the cursed woman. At the feed store, folks muttered behind hands. Old Mrs. Harrow spat on the ground and crossed herself when she heard. "That woman's trouble," she hissed. "She brings ruin." Zeb just bought his nails and left. He did not care what they said. He had seen the way Seraphina flinched when he lit the lantern, how she braced for pain every time someone raised their voice. And he had seen the way her fingers moved, gentle, careful, like she had spent years trying not to break anything else. She helped him tend the horses. She was quiet, but not cold. She spoke soft to the animals, and they listened. Even the old gray mare, who kicked everyone else, stood still for her. One evening, as they mucked out stalls, he asked, "What happened to the rancher who hurt you?" Her face tightened. "He said I was his, said I owed him for taking me in. When I said no, he hit me. Then he tried to take more. I ran." Zeb's jaw clenched. "If he comes looking, he will not," she said. "He is dead. He tried to chase me through the woods. He fell and broke his neck." Zeb looked at her, but she was not crying, just staring at the hay like it held the answer to something. "I did not push him," she added softly. "But they will say I did." 3 weeks passed. Snow melted into mud. Seraphina stayed. Zeb did not ask her to leave. He liked her there, quiet in the kitchen, singing under her breath when she thought he could not hear. She patched his shirt one night, and he had not asked her to. Just came in from the barn and found it folded on the table, stitched clean one night. After supper, she stood with her hands wrapped around a mug of tea and said, "Why are you not afraid of me?" Zeb looked up from cleaning his rifle. "Because you are not a curse. You are a woman folks treated wrong." Her throat worked like she was trying to swallow something sharp. "I do not know how to be anything else." He stood, walked over, took the cup from her hands and set it down. "Well," he said, "you can learn. Start here." She looked at him like no one had ever said that before, then nodded once. He found her crying behind the barn. 3 days later, she had a letter crumpled in her hand. Her shoulders shook, but she made no sound. Zeb crouched beside her. "What is it?" She handed him the letter. It was from a man in Billings. Said her younger brother and sister twins named Hazel and Henry had been taken to an orphanage after their last guardian died. Said they had asked for Seraphina, but had been told she was dead. "They are all I have left," she whispered. "And I did not even know they were alive." Zeb stood. "Then we go get them." She looked up, startled. "But no buts, we ride to Billings. I am not letting you lose more family, not if I can help it." Tears rolled down her cheeks now, silent and fast. "Why are you doing this?" He crouched again, voice steady. "Because I do not believe in curses, and because I believe in you." She launched forward and hugged him, arms tight around his ribs, face pressed into his coat. He held her back, one hand in her hair, the other on her spine. "I do not deserve this," she whispered. "You deserve more than this," he said into her hair. "But we will start here." 2 days later they rode out before dawn. The trail to Billings was rough, but Zeb had packed enough for the journey. Seraphina rode beside him, straighter in the saddle than when he first found her. She had braided her hair back, face set with quiet fire. They reached the orphanage on the 3rd day. The twins came out hand in hand, 2 small figures with wide eyes and matching brown curls. Hazel saw Seraphina first. She screamed her name and ran. Seraphina dropped to her knees, arms wide. "Hazel," she sobbed. "Henry." The boy followed close, slower, more cautious. But when he saw her crying, he threw himself into her arms too. Zeb stood back, heart full. Later, as they rode away with both children bundled up behind them, Seraphina turned to him, eyes shining. "You saved me," she said. "And them." Zeb reached over and squeezed her hand. "You are not a curse," he said. "You are my greatest luck." She looked at him like he had just handed her the world, and for the first time in her life, she believed it. The wind changed on the ride back from Billings. It carried the scent of thawing pine and damp earth, the kind of smell that meant spring was waking up beneath the last crusts of snow. They rode single file through a narrow valley, Hazel nestled against Seraphina's back, Henry riding with Zeb, quiet but alert, watching the trail like he was memorizing it. By the time they reached Zeb's homestead again, the creek beside the pasture had begun to run clear. The horses drank deep before Zeb led them into the barn. Seraphina stood by the porch, one hand resting lightly on Hazel's shoulder, her eyes moving over the land like she was seeing it different now. Like it might choose to keep her this time. That night, Henry built the fire himself. He didn't ask, just stacked the kindling, struck the flint and worked the bellows until the flames caught strong. Seraphina watched from the doorway, arms folded, lips parted just slightly. "You teach him that?" she asked Zeb once the boy was asleep. "No. He must have learned it somewhere else." She nodded, but her gaze didn't leave the hearth. "He never used to do things on his own, always waited for me to tell him." Zeb poured 2 mugs of coffee, handed her one. Maybe he needed to feel safe first. Her fingers brushed his as she took it. "He talks more with you than he ever did with the rancher." Zeb didn't say anything to that, just sat beside her on the bench and drank. Later, when the fire burned low and the twins were curled together on the cot in the corner, Zeb found Seraphina standing in the barn, staring at the rafters. Her shawl was dusted with hay. "They'll need a school," she said without turning, "and coats and boots that fit." "We'll ride into Helena next week," he said. "There's a dry goods store there. I've got enough set aside." She turned then, slow. "You keep giving. Don't ask for anything back." "I don't need anything back." She looked at him a long time. "Not even me." Zeb stepped forward. "You're not something to barter, Seraphina. You're a woman trying to raise 2 children and find her footing. If I can help, I will." She reached out, touched his chest just over the collarbone. Her fingers were warm. "I don't know what to do with kindness that doesn't come with a price." Then let it be new. The quiet between them stretched, but it wasn't empty. She stepped closer until her forehead rested against his shoulder. His arms came around her without thought. "I can't promise I'll be easy," she said into his shirt. "I wake in the night sometimes, can't breathe right. I still get afraid for no reason." He pressed his cheek to her hair. "That's all right. I've known fear too. It doesn't have to stay." When she lifted her head, her eyes were steady. "You're not afraid I'll bring more trouble. Trouble's a part of life," he said. "But so's choosing who walks through it with you." She leaned up then, kissed him once, soft and sure. "Then I choose you." The next morning, Zeb saddled the wagon and hitched both horses. Henry helped without being asked, tying the knots neat. Hazel sat beside Seraphina on the porch, trying to stitch a patch onto her brother's shirt with crooked little fingers. Zeb tapped the side of the wagon. "We'll load up firewood, trade it in Helena. Be back before sundown." Seraphina nodded. "I'll make stew if the potatoes haven't gone green." "Check the back barrel," Zeb said. "Should be good ones left there." He didn't kiss her as he climbed up beside Henry, but the way their eyes met said just as much. On the road, Henry asked, "Are we staying with you now?" Zeb kept his eyes on the trail. "If that's what you want." The boy was quiet for a stretch. Then he said, "She doesn't cry at night anymore." Zeb gave a small nod. "That's good." Henry looked up at him, eyes the same shade as Seraphina's. "You make her feel like she matters. She never had that before." Zeb swallowed against the sudden tightness in his throat. "She matters more than she knows." When they returned, the cabin smelled of thyme and smoke and something warm that had been missing for years. After supper, Hazel fell asleep against her sister's lap, and Henry sat cross-legged on the floor, carving a bit of wood Zeb had given him. Seraphina stood up and took Zeb's hand. "Come with me." He followed her out to the porch. The moon hung low, caught in the throat of the trees. Her fingers found his. "I've been thinking," she said, "about what a home is. It's not walls or land or what folks say about you." "No," he said. "It's who waits for you." She leaned her head against his arm. "Then I'm home." Zeb turned and kissed her hair. "So am I." By late April, the land had softened, and the last of the ice along the lower creek gave way to cold, clear water. The cottonwoods began to leaf out pale green, and the fence rails no longer groaned with frost before dawn. Zeb built a new coop out back, hammering through the afternoons while Henry handed him nails without being told. Hazel followed Seraphina through the grass, asking questions about every herb she touched. Seraphina had found a patch of wild yarrow near the south field and was drying it in bundles beneath the eaves. "For the fevers," she told Zeb one afternoon, nodding toward the hanging stalks. "And for wounds that don't want to close." Zeb ran a hand along the rough siding. "You've got a way with things that need healing." She didn't answer right away, just watched the wind move the green tips of the grass like a tide. "I've had to learn how. Sometimes the hard way." That evening she sat on the porch with a scrap of muslin across her knees, stitching loops with measured care. Zeb watched her from the doorway. "Is that for Hazel?" "No," she said, not looking up. "It's for me. I've never had anything with my own thread in it." Zeb stepped out beside her and leaned against the beam. "You ought to have more than that. A woman who's carried what you have deserves something fine." She paused her needle. "I don't need fine, I need honest, I need steady." He met her eyes. "You've got both." The next morning, Zeb rode into town alone. The mule had thrown a shoe, and Jonah's at the smithy charged less when Zeb brought it in himself. Before mounting, he knelt beside Henry. "You watch the gate while I'm gone. If anyone you don't know comes up the road, get your sister and stay inside." Henry nodded solemn. "I'll keep my rifle close." Zeb adjusted the boy's collar. "Only if you have to. No one's looking to make trouble, but we stay ready." On the ride back, a storm broke over the hills. The wind came first, bending the trees low. Then came the rain, thick and fast. Zeb covered the supplies with his slicker and pushed the mule hard. By the time he reached the homestead, dusk had settled gray and wet over the land. He found Seraphina in the barn, lantern lit, her dress soaked to the knees, both hands pressed to Hazel's face. "She fell," Seraphina said. "Split her cheek on the corner of the trough. I stopped the bleeding, but Zeb dropped to his knees beside them." Hazel leaned against her sister's chest, limp but breathing steady. "She didn't cry," Seraphina whispered. "Not once." "I'll bring the hot stones," Zeb said. "We'll warm the blankets and keep her still." They worked by the light of the lantern, Seraphina's hands never leaving her sister's skin. When Hazel finally slept, Seraphina leaned back against the stall wall, her face pale with spent fear. Zeb crouched beside her. "You didn't panic." "I wanted to," she said, "but she needed me calm." He brushed damp hair from her temple. "You were," her eyes found his. "I don't know how to stop being afraid for them." "You don't have to. You just have to keep standing." She reached for his hand and didn't let go. The next day, Zeb cleared a corner of the cabin and built a second bed frame. He didn't say why, but Seraphina watched him from across the room, her fingers still on the edge of the muslin cloth she hadn't touched since the night before. By the time the sun dropped behind the ridge, the frame stood steady, sanded smooth. He left the tools beside the wall and sat on the floor, back to the beam. She came to him without a word and lowered herself beside him, shoulder against his. He spoke first. "I've been thinking about what comes next." She turned her head slightly. "I wasn't sure we got a next." "You do. And I'd like to be part of it." She didn't answer right away. Then, "I used to think love was a doorway I'd never walk through, just something I'd stand outside of, watching other people step in." Zeb reached over, laced his fingers through hers. "You're through it now." She leaned her head back and closed her eyes. "Then I'm staying if you'll have me. I've had you since the day you didn't flinch when that gray mare laid her head in your lap." She smiled, eyes still shut. "That old mare's got better sense than most folks. She sure does." They didn't say anything more. Just sat with the quiet, their hands folded together like two halves of a whole. The wind shifted again that night. The scent of lilac drifted in from the far slope, faint but sure. Spring had come to stay, and so had she. In May, the first calf was born on Zeb's land since the deep snow last fall. It came at dawn, slick and red-brown in the slanted light, and Seraphina was the one who spotted it first, kneeling in the pasture mud, whispering to the heifer while her hands moved steady and sure. She didn't call for help, didn't flinch at the blood or the strain. Just stayed there until the calf dropped and drew breath. Zeb found her after, sleeves soaked to the elbows, eyes shining in a way he hadn't yet seen. "She let me help," Seraphina said, backing away slowly so the mother could nuzzle her calf. "Didn't fight me once." "She trusts you," Zeb said. "I didn't think I could still be trusted with anything new, not after everything that's gone wrong." "She's new," Zeb said, "and she lived." Seraphina didn't answer. She just watched the calf stagger up on long, trembling legs and sway its way toward its mother. That night, Zeb lit a lantern in the loft and brought up the bundle he hadn't touched since before the snow. It was wrapped in oilcloth, kept beneath the floorboards of the old cedar chest. He hadn't meant to open it again, not until he was sure. He found her in the doorway of the barn, watching the calf sleep beside its mother. Her braid was coming loose, and there was straw in the hem of her dress. "I've got something," he said, holding out the cloth. She didn't take it right away. "What is it?" "My mother gave it to me before she passed. Said it belonged to her mother before her." He unfolded the cloth carefully, revealing a silver brooch shaped like a running horse, the metal dulled with time. "She said I'd know who it belonged to when the time came." Seraphina looked at him, eyes unreadable. "Why now?" "Because I know." She reached out, touched the brooch with 2 fingers like it might vanish if she moved too fast. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "But I'm not sure I should wear something that's meant to be passed down." Zeb closed her hand around it. "You already are." In the weeks that followed, she wore it pinned to her collar when they rode into Helena for seed sacks and copper wire. The woman at the milliner's gave her a curious look, but Seraphina stood straighter and didn't lower her eyes. Hazel held tight to her hand through the bustling street, and Henry walked beside Zeb, asking quiet questions about every tool he didn't recognize. Back at the homestead, they planted rows of beans and cabbage. Seraphina marked each row with a small stone to keep track. Henry kept a tally on the barn wall with a bit of charcoal. One evening, after the children had gone to bed, Seraphina sat on the porch with Zeb, a tin cup of coffee cooling between her palms. The clouds were low and the stars were few. "I used to think I'd die alone," she said. Zeb didn't turn. "I used to think I already had," he said. She looked at him then, the weight of her gaze steady. "You never ask me what I want. I didn't want to press you. I want this," she said. "I want mornings where you're already outside before the rooster crows. I want to dry herbs and teach Hazel to sew straight. I want Henry to learn how to fix a gate before he turns 12. I want to plant more than we can carry and give the rest to folks who need it. I want to grow old with someone who doesn't leave when it gets hard." Zeb reached over, took the cup from her hands and set it aside. "Then stay." "I already have." She leaned in, kissed him slow, no fear in it now, no doubt, no trembling place left inside her. They didn't speak again that night. Just sat close while the wind moved through the grass, their shoulders pressed together, the porch creaking soft beneath them. By midsummer, the second calf came. Then the wheat began to rise in the far field. Henry carved his first bow, and Hazel learned to braid her own hair. Seraphina's muslin cloth became a full apron, embroidered with tiny flowers only she seemed to have the patience for. And one morning, without announcement or ceremony, Zeb took her hand as they stood beneath the cottonwoods and said, "You're my home now, just as you are." Seraphina looked at the land stretching out around them, then back at him. "You're my greatest luck," she whispered. He kissed her forehead, and with that, they began a life neither of them had ever dared imagine. Nothing cursed, nothing broken, just the quiet, certain beginning of something that would last. By the time the wheat was waist-high and thick with gold, Seraphina had taken to waking before the sun. She didn't say why, but Zeb noticed the way she lingered out near the edge of the fields with her shawl drawn close, and her hands folded like she was listening for an answer she hadn't yet heard. One morning, he followed her out just as the first light brushed the far ridge. The sky held that soft, pewter blue that only came before dawn. She was barefoot, toes in the grass, her expression unreadable. "You always rise this early now?" Zeb asked, keeping his voice low. "I used to fear the morning," she said. "It meant I'd survived the night. And that meant I had to do it all again." Zeb stepped beside her, not touching, just present. "And now it feels like something new starts every time the sun hits that fence line." They watched the light spill over the pasture. A meadowlark called from the fence post. Neither of them moved. "I want to marry you," Zeb said. She turned her head slow, eyes steady. "You're sure?" "I've been sure each day since you started leaving your boots by the door instead of the threshold." She looked down at her bare feet in the grass. "You take me like this. No linen, no lace, no town preacher. I'd take you just like this. Before God, the grain, and whoever's listening." She stepped close, her hand finding his. "Then I say yes." They married 3 evenings later under the cottonwoods, Zeb in his cleanest shirt and Seraphina in a dress she'd dyed herself with boiled walnut hulls. It was the color of warm earth and fit her like it had been waiting for her shoulders. Hazel wore a crown of wild lupine and carried a basket of petals. Henry stood beside Zeb, straight and proud, holding a sprig of pine as a gesture of blessing. Zeb spoke first. "I give you what I have. My hands, my land, my name." Seraphina didn't speak right away. The wind stirred her hair, and her eyes glinted with something deep and sure. "I give you what I am. The broken pieces, the whole ones, and every quiet morning still to come." They sealed it with a kiss and a long silence filled only by the hush of wind and the creak of tree limbs overhead. That night, after the children were asleep and the fire had burned down to red coals, Zeb traced the curve of her back with his hand as she lay beside him. "You were never a curse," he said. "I know that now," she whispered, "but I needed you to believe it first." "I did. And I will every day that comes." She turned into his arms, her breath warm against his throat. "Then I'll never leave." And she didn't. The seasons turned like pages in a book. The wheat gave way to stubble, and the wind took on a sharper edge. Seraphina taught Hazel to make salves from pine resin and willow bark. Henry learned to read wind signs and track mule deer through the brush. Zeb built a second chicken run, and Seraphina planted 2 rows of lavender just beyond the porch. When winter came again, it came softer. The snow didn't choke the land like before. It settled gently, and inside the cabin, warmth pulsed steady from hearth and heart alike. One night, as Zeb brushed the frost from the window pane, Seraphina wrapped a quilt around his shoulders and leaned into his side. "There's a child on the way," she said. He didn't speak, just turned and pulled her into him, holding her like he could anchor her to the earth. Her cheek pressed against his chest, and he felt the tremble of her breath. "I'm not afraid," she said. "You don't have to be. You're not alone." And she wasn't. When the baby came in the spring, a girl with a voice like thunder on the hills, it was Hazel who brought warm water, and Henry who rode for the midwife. Seraphina labored quiet, her hand in Zeb's, her eyes fixed on the rafters. And when it was done, she wept not from pain, but from a kind of joy that had no name. They named her Ruth, after Zeb's mother. Years passed. The land grew fuller. Zeb carved a cradle from pine, and Seraphina painted it with wildflowers. Hazel learned to play a dulcimer gifted by an old trapper, and Henry, now tall as Zeb, took over morning chores without being asked. Ruth grew with bright eyes and a laugh like creek water over stone. One summer evening, Zeb and Seraphina sat beneath the cottonwoods, Ruth asleep on her lap. Fireflies blinked in the dark grass, and the air smelled of mint and cut hay. "You remember the day you found me?" Seraphina asked. "I do." "I was half dead." "No," he said softly. "You were half born." She looked down at the child in her arms, then back at him. "I didn't believe in peace." "Not really, not then." "I did," Zeb said. "I just hadn't found it yet." She smiled, her hand reaching for his. "We did more than find it." He brought her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles one by one. "We built it." And under the stars, with the rustle of wheat in the breeze and their children safe inside the home they'd made, they stayed whole, unbroken, and entirely theirs.